We're going to get started, and you all know that the topic today is SMART goals. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the what of SMART goals. What are SMART goals? Why are they important? And what we're really hoping to do is really help you figure out, so how do I do this? So I've had my meeting with my boss. I've got a PEP. I'm working on a SMART goal. How do I actually make that happen? So our goal today, and what we will define as success, is if you can walk away with one thing to work on later today or tomorrow that will help you move some of your goals forward, we will have met our goal of trying to give you some ideas and tools to be productive and effective.
So your goal will have been SMART.
Well, to be determined. That's the hope. See, yes. Yes, so it's the one thing that you guys can work on, and we'll check in with you before we leave to make sure you all have that one thing to work on. So we're going to start with the what, and we're just going to quickly go over that.
So everybody here has used the word, like, I have a goal at some point in their life. SMART goals have some specific attributes that make them special. And they are specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. So you might have a goal, I want to be wealthy. Okay, well, that's a great goal. That's not a SMART goal. A SMART goal is, I want to have $2 million. I want to have $2 million by the time I retire. So by the time I'm 65, so the time is measurable and the financial impact is measurable. It's actionable. So I have a retirement fund at work. I'm going to sign up for. I'll sign up for that and take advantage of any matching. It's realistic. So I mean, if you don't have any extra money, or if you're 64, this may not be a realistic goal to want to save $2 million in the next 365 days. And time bound, it has a deadline. So these boundaries and this structure allows you to kind of move things forward. So it helps you get things done. They're helpful because they are also stackable. So if you have a really huge goal that you want to do, it helps you break it down into smaller goals. So you can kind of chunk it down into things that are less overwhelming. If you have an enormous goal that you're working towards, it's important for you to not overwhelm yourself. Have you ever had a goal, or have you ever had a plan or something, and you're just not even sure what the first step is? So these types of things, using SMART goals, can help you break it down so that you can just take one small step towards achieving it. And it does set you up for success. How many people here are aware of SMART goals and have used these in the past? Yeah. Have you found them to be to help you propel things forward? Now, saying SMART goals is SMART goals is also, it's kind of like saying, here's this great weight loss program. I know it's there, but when you set your SMART goals, the other thing, we talked about this with vision and values in the first session as well. If you weren't here for vision and values, and you have, or you haven't gone through it already, it's on the website. And you can just make sure afterwards we're going to follow up with information about the website as well. But you need to come back to it. It's important for you to be a part of the work. So you can't just say, this is my SMART goal, I will be a millionaire. You have to come back and do the actual work for it.
And those who raised their hand who had a SMART goal, does anyone have a story or a specific example that they'd be willing to share that would be helpful, that would help?
No sharing?
Someone.
I'm always one to talk, nobody else will.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I have chicken sandwiches.
Yes.
Okay, so this was sort of an early in my career thing. One of the first jobs I did out of college was to teach enlisted and officers how to run nuclear reactors. But in order to be able to do that job, I had to have a security clearance. And my recruiter didn't check the right box for that to happen. So I showed up at work the first day. They looked at me and escorted me off the base because I didn't have a clearance. I wasn't allowed to be on the base with that kind of information from a military standpoint. So they had to go through a bunch of rigmarole to get me my clearance. And while they were doing that, that takes a process. It takes about 6 months. They got to go talk to your second grade teacher. They got to do. It's insane what they really do. But just making sure you're not an enemy of the state before they give you information on this kind of stuff. So, so while they were doing all that, I had to do something different. So I was the only person at this command, the only officer at this command who didn't have a clearance. So they had to put me in a job that was different than any other officer I'd ever done there before. I didn't really know what to do to try to make that be a success because I wanted to be able to stand out. So one of the things, they put me basically in a different school. So instead of teaching nuclear reactors, you're going to teach electronics and mechanics. All right, fine. I'll go do that. That wasn't confidential, I could do it. But in order to try to make myself feel better about the situation and to try to make it some kind of success, I set myself a goal. That, okay, it typically takes X amount of time in order to be qualified to teach this thing. So it's going to take you, let's say, 3 months to be trained how to teach this topic. And I set myself the goal, okay, I want to do that in less than 60% of that time. So instead of 3 months, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to try to do this thing in 5 weeks. Oh, sorry, 7 weeks. And so that was my overarching goal. Get qualified in 7 weeks. Was it achievable? Yeah, it was. But at first, it was sort of audacious. And I think that's one thing the SMART goals can help you with as well, is making those statements that says, okay, what do I really want to achieve, and is it achievable? But I also like to use them as a pushing thing. So sometimes the realistic bit there, people can use that as, well, don't go too big. Don't, make it realistic. Well, okay. Actually, I would say that taking the big one, it maybe doesn't look realistic, but if you break it down, kind of like you break down a project, you say, okay, so I got this big overarching goal. This is what I want to achieve, and this is when I want to achieve it by. What can I do with these little individual pieces to be able to do it? And that's what I think worked for me. So a little bit of a rambling story there,
but it's a good story because it has all the key elements in there. And that idea about realistic is somewhat subjective, but I think what Quinn did is probably a good way to go. Better to shoot too high than to too low, because it's easy to say, well, I'll do that in they said 3 months. I'll do it in 4 months. So to really shoot at a more reasonable. So better to shoot higher, make it more audacious goals, he said. So, anyway.
No, and I think it's a good example of how to take a larger overarching goal and to break it down into smaller steps. They're also, they're for you. We talked about this with vision and values. They're for you, and you can always reassess them as well. Sometimes you're trying to get to a new target. Sometimes you think you're on a certain path and you're heading that way, and life throws you a curveball, and suddenly, what was your highest priority yesterday isn't your highest priority today. So the reason why you would use this is, again, to align yourself with the direction that you want to take your life. And so that's, on the personal level, there's many different things that you might want to do to enhance how things are going, and to align with the vision and values that you had, that you've done from the previous exercise. For professionally, we have the mission, vision, and value statement for IS&T. And sometimes we have them hanging on the wall, and stuff, but really look at them and try to see how you can align what you're doing with the goals that Tracy has set for our department. Sometimes it does help you give you some direction and structure. It is the season. I'm sure we're all enjoying our peps. How many people have already had their peps? So much joy in the room.
Like, weren't they due last Monday?
Yeah.
Everybody should have raised their hand.
Yeah. We had a good turnout. Duly noted for HR, we had a very good turnout.
Duly noted.
But at the end of the PEPs, everybody has these goals that have been set, and some of them you had some say in, and some of them were dictated as trickle down from your manager's goals or your leadership.
Nick.
So sometimes in goals that are are personal, one of the great things is being highly motivated and really having some passion for what you're doing. The goals from your PEPs, maybe you're super crazy excited about them, and that's fantastic. But maybe sometimes you're having a little bit of a hard time understanding, how you're going to motivate yourself through these things. And breaking them down into SMART goals and breaking them down so that it's not looming across 12 months is also a really great step to take. So as we're going through some of the exercises, or maybe the takeaway that we have today, is to look at one of the goals from your performance appraisal and try to use it and put it into the SMART goal format and see if you can move forward. Another great thing about it is, instead of waiting until next November, October, if you achieve that goal sooner and you go to your supervisor and you say, you set this goal for me, I just want to let you know these are the steps I've taken towards it, or I've achieved this one. And so maybe there's some mid-year goals that are added that can keep what you're doing challenging and fresh. So you can use it to track your progress and also to report to your supervisors about the progress that you're making as well. The nice thing about the SMART goals is that they help you understand if you are actually making progress. Again, these overarching goals of, I'm going to be a millionaire, I'd like to, I want to travel the world, I want to get a degree. Those aren't SMART goals. Those are good goals to shoot at, but you're not breaking it down into the steps that is actually going to propel you forward.
Can we just go back to the how do you know?
Please.
This is a big deal. So we had the pleasure, there's a guy named W. Edwards Deming who was really big in the whole quality management movement, and maybe 15 years ago before he passed away, he came to BU. And he was famous for talking about how do you know? So when you were working on a project, how do you know you're successful? How do you know you've hit your targets? And for a lot of people, there would be silence. When I would work with a group, I'd say, did you have a good week? It's a good week. How do you know? Silence, because most people wouldn't know. And it used to be, well, I didn't get yelled at. Oh, awesome. But so when you're working on SMART goals, you can say, yes, I know because I did X, Y, or Z, and because that was part of my SMART goal. So you can answer that question. So when you leave on Friday, you would know that you've had a productive week because you've made measurable progress on your goals. And that's a big deal, and that feels good when you actually can start to see those things move forward.
These are also great when you were working on projects because, as we all know now, projects there are steps that you need to take and there's dependencies. So things have to happen in a certain order. A has to happen before you can get to B, and using SMART goals is another way that you can make sure that you're staying on track with project plans and in collaboration with your colleagues in projects progress. Okay, so why use them? Again, it supports your vision. So a vision is, I'll have a master's degree. Well, that's a good goal, and I will have a master's degree. I will become more competitive in my field. So that may be the vision. Your goal might be, I will have a master's degree. So the SMART goal helps you break it into these steps. First, you need to pick a program, take an entrance exam, apply to a program, develop your class schedule, and then pick a start date. And once you pick a start date, then you can actually go and create another SMART goal for getting through this class and have a plan for propelling you through the entire process.
Can you just back up for 1 second?
Yeah.
One thing, there's a guy named David Allen who wrote a book called Getting Things Done. I don't know if anyone's familiar. And his whole thing is, what's your next action? And he really would push you, and I have a friend who's helping me kind of go through this. You can only really do one thing at a time. And so he'd really focus on what's the next thing you're going to do. So if you really want to get a master's degree, well, what's the next action? Well, I need to investigate programs. Well, what's your next action? I need to sort of figure out what school I want to go to. And you really need to figure out what is that specific next thing I need to do. Because at the end of the day, that's all we can do is that one thing. We talk about multitasking and all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, if you can just focus on the one next step, it sort of breaks it down a little bit. So.
I'm laughing because I'm realizing that I've been doing this in my house because this is my new process with my 8-year-old son to get him to school on time.
Yeah.
Is, brush your hair, brush your teeth, get your backpack, get your lunchbox. So now I'm going through and going, what are you doing next? What are you going to do next?
Yeah.
So see, yeah.
We're getting things done a lot.
Yeah.
One of the other key things with that is to get the things you're going to do down to an amount of time that you can manage.
Right.
Right. Can I get, You want to get things down to where in an hour or two, I can get this done. Because if it's bigger than that, it's not small enough to be a next action,
Right.
right? If it's gonna take 3 weeks, that's too big, you have to break it down. 3 days, too big, break it down. You know, you have to get down to things that are actionable.
Right.
So this process, you just keep slicing and dicing, you know, till you get to little cubes of potatoes.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a great point. A lot of the work that I've done with outside clients is about feelings of overwhelm. And I know that sometimes that, you know, everybody in this room has gone through times, you know, at work or in personal life where you're almost paralyzed because you're just not sure what happens. And so that's an excellent point that you're making, that if 3 weeks is too far, then, you know, take it back to a week. If a week is too much. You know, and there are days that I've had where I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm going to plan I'm 15 minutes out right now.
Right.
So if you're asking me to commit to something next week, I'm 15 minutes out. And maybe by giving myself that space, the next day I'm 2 hours out. And then you kind of give yourself a little bit of room and you get back on track. Okay.
So now we're going to give you a chance to think about the how. And so we're asking you to push a little bit, but we're asking you to think of a story or an example of a time when you were working at your best and you're actually getting things done. And you're making progress and hitting your goals. So what we're going to ask you to do is take a few minutes, you know, as much time as you might need, and think about the story. I don't know if you have an example that comes to mind.
You know, well, when I was getting my master's degree, I had
If you need paper, we
there were certain times when I had to reprioritize some stuff. So I think the key attributes of the story in my last semester, I had to do a field internship, and I was working full time here, and I had some outside commitments. Was being honest about my priorities, and being honest about how much I could take on. I know a lot of people have this kind of, you know, soldier on, push through, pick yourself up by your bootstraps thing. And honestly, at this time of year, I think it's, you know, a lot of people start to feel this way as well, as the joy of the holidays is a little bit after the pressures of the holidays. So for me, it's being honest about my ability to commit my time, to make sure that what I was doing wasn't going to exhaust me, to make, you know, taking time to reflect, but also being really passionate about what I was doing, and looking forward to the success of having achieved that goal.
So does everyone have paper and pens? So we're asking you to think about a story when you were at your best, when you were making things happen. And what's that story? And some of the things to think about is, we'll come up with your story, then we'll kind of dissect a little bit. And the goal is to help us all collectively come up with some IS&T wisdom about how do we actually make stuff happen. Because it's easy to set the goals. Yeah, I'm going to do this in 7 weeks. And I know why, but actually to make it happen, that's the hard part. And so this isn't an easy exercise, but that's why we're asking you to think a little bit, stretch a little bit, push a little bit, and think about a story when you were at your best and you were making things happen. And take some time, put some bullets, write a paragraph, draw a picture, whatever meets your needs.
Does anybody need paper or pen?
Pen? Sorry, no. Yeah.
So I can sell it?
If you like, might be part of your smart goal.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be an IT related thing.
It does
No,
not.
no.
Absolutely not. So we've said this at the earlier lunch series. These are definitely meant to help you in your professional life, but it's also, the work and what you consider here is also hopefully going to benefit your personal life.
And we talked about, we're trying to create this oasis for you to think and reflect, something that's hard to do at work. So this is not an easy exercise, so we really would ask you to kind of really think about a story when you were at your best. And what made this work? How were you able to be successful and effective? So we're going to want to hear some of those key things. What was it about your story that really made things happen? So if you want to find one or two people around you, if you're done, if you're not, keep writing. All right, we're going to get started. So we know you guys can talk longer to switch here to see everyone the connection, but we want to make sure we get out on time. That's one of our goals. We know what that looks like. So who's got a story that they'd be willing to share about when they were at their best? And okay, and if you can just listen for what are some of the attributes. So what made it work? So please go for it.
So I was the co-producer of a festival that took place on top of a mountain in Santa Cruz. We were expecting between 900 and 1,000 people for a week-long camping event. We had all-night fires, drumming seminars. We'd feed everybody. It was crazy. It was an insane thing that we were doing. One of the things that I did was built a production notebook before we went up on the mountain. So I literally had a notebook that thick that had the list of every team lead and their team members, all the volunteers on those teams, the schedule, every sign that had to be posted, where it was going to be posted, the map of the site, literally copies of the signs, like what they say, because there were arrows going this way and arrows going this way. Built that up, and I made copies of it for each of the key team leads and handed it out when we got on site. And that was huge. It was people were able to answer their own questions instead of radioing me all the time, which is very, very helpful. Also, another feature was we delegated and we broke up responsibility and authority. So people were put in charge of particular venues, like, okay, you're going to build a fire circle, you're going to build a hospitality tent, mine is the registration area. And really empowered those people to do whatever it took to make their thing work without having to come back and check with management and so forth. And the next thing is that we had to pass those team leads. It was all volunteer. Nobody's getting paid. So people got to do what they liked to do and what they were good at. And there were guys who what they really wanted to do was wave the cars along the street and greet people through their window. And there were people who really wanted to peel potatoes. So everybody got to do what they really wanted to do, and that helped make us successful even in a very stressful, packed preparation and welcoming environment. So let's see what else. We had to stay flexible and adjustable and stay really positive and focused, because there were people who would show up on the mountain. I missed my airplane, my car broke down at the bottom of the mountain, I caught a ride from somebody else, and no, by the way, you're not registered and haven't paid. Yeah. So, we had cars broken down on one-way roads, we had food trucks show up with a guy who thought, oh, maybe he'd just come to the festival and sell stuff that we'd never heard of before. I had to find a place to put him because his truck was breaking down. It was quite an adventure. So I think without all the planning, we could not possibly have dealt with the unexpected stuff, right? There was no way to plan for everything, but we had a plan to a point, so we could then deal with the rest. And I set really good boundaries, delegated. I said to my registrar team members, this is the box. Within here, you have all discretion, make decisions, do what you need to do. When it goes outside that box, now you have to call me. And it was great, because it reduced the number of calls I got, and I made the decisions that I needed to make, and they were able to handle everything else, and made people feel more welcome, got things moving faster. So, yeah, how am I doing?
That's great.
Yeah, so Linda's capturing some of the attributes. Anything that people want to add that they're hearing from Lila's story?
I think one thing. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sounded like Burning Mountain.
Yeah, we had a lot of overlap attendance. It was called Fire Dance. It does not exist anymore, but it was a spiritual, celebratory, online fire circle, a lot of drumming, dancing, arts and crafts. We just did all kinds of stuff. It was a lot of fun.
So you were going to say in terms of attribute?
Yeah, I think one attribute that was common for all of us was breaking things down into chunks.
Yeah.
Kind of manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, we were all successful with our goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the idea. We talked about strengths last time, and we can learn from the things that we do well, and that's the idea. You were gonna.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, as I know that this is such a strong element in getting so many things done. In a way, it cuts against that, but perseverance. If you don't have perseverance with all of the breakdowns and this and that,
Yeah.
so many things end up getting done through some kind of perseverance.
Yeah.
And then you say, geez, this is really too much.
Yeah.
But if then you turn around with these attributes of breaking it down,
Yes.
Yeah.
but keep with it.
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah, I had to take, I mean, I was under a lot of pressure there was like a 48-hour period where 900 people were checking in, and it was crazy.
So-
And one of the things that I learned to do was take breaks, to really take them. Like, okay, I'm so on, I'm so focused. It's been 3 hours, you know what? I'm gonna take a 15-minute break for myself. If you have a question, I'll be back. You know, hold on to it. And that allowed me to sort of reboot my brain, let go of whatever I'd been dealing with an hour ago, and be fresh, you know, for what was new. It was really important to do that. But yeah, but then the perseverance, like you have to go back.
Be
You have to
perseverant,
come back.
but you have to pace yourself
Right.
too, not
Yeah.
get wiped
Right.
out.
Other stories?
Could I just share the accountability?
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Accountability to yourself,
Well,
or,
to the goals in general. Holding yourself accountable to the situation, but also by holding yourself accountable, you tie yourself to it.
Right.
If you make it personal, you're going to be more inspired to do it than if it's just some nebulous thing of.
Yeah. No, I go to the gym 3 days a week with two other buddies, and when one of us don't show up, we get a bunch of crap. And it really, and we don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I'd heard that as a good goal, a motivator for goals is go public.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
other words, because then you're embarrassed if you're not.
Well, I don't know if you want to share your story. Put you on the spot a little bit.
Oh man, I gotta tell it again.
You're getting good at it, I bet.
I don't want to tell that whole part. Is that appropriate for work?
It's fine.
So last year I went to the doctor, and my doctor told me I had to lose weight and become more healthy and quit doing things like smoking cigarettes. And I was like, "You're crazy. What's wrong with you? Are you a doctor or something?" So I set up I was going to run a 5K. I was like, "Yeah, I'll do a 5K." And I talked to a friend of mine. He's like, "Yeah, we're running one coming up in the spring. Why don't you sign up for that?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's great. When is it?" He said in 7 weeks. So I was like, "Yeah, that's okay. So I can do 7 weeks. Come on, it's 3 miles, whatever. I can walk that in less than 45 minutes, you know, if I walk quick." And if there's cigarettes at the end.
That goal.
Motivate, you gotta motivate.
Carrot stick or cigarette.
But
motivation.
the program that I signed up to, because I went to the Couch to 5K program and I signed up for it, it's a 9-week program, and I was like, whatever, 9 weeks, I'll figure it out. Well, part of that was the whole planning process, where I had now had 7 weeks to do a 9-week program, kind of like had to squeeze it in like you have to do with yours, but on a much less scale. A lot of the stuff that I had to do is I had to look at the way of conditioning myself, because I ride a bike a lot and did do so, and I was like, riding a bike, running. I know it's a little more difficult, but 2 different worlds. Like, as I was saying to you, like there's a whole world of pain that exists between your knee and your shins that just you don't really realize until you hit concrete every day for 7 weeks. And that was something I had to get over. I had to be like, all right, well, I have to persevere through that pain. I have to persevere through all this because I had a goal, but I also set up accountability. My buddies and I, we all got together and decided that whoever didn't run this in the allotted time had to run the Santa run, which is a 5K, and just went by. But we had to do it in thongs. No one wanted. Absolutely no one wanted. I didn't want to do it. We didn't want to see it.
There's no pictures, by the way. That's why.
No, we all, surprisingly, we all made it. We all made it in the allotted time. But there were like certain things that we didn't take into account. Like when I was training, I was like, oh, well, I'll just go out and buy a pair of shorts, buy a pair of shoes, and I'll run. One of the things I didn't take into account is I have flat feet. And that's an issue when you're running because your ankle turns. So I was susceptible to sprains. So I had to go out and I had to buy the appropriate equipment to correct for that. It gets cold in the spring in Massachusetts. Who knew? I also had to plan times in which to run because I work, and so I was going during my lunch break, but then like meetings would come up and stuff like that, and I didn't want to not do this thing, so I had to, okay, I just want to have some flexibility where one day I actually missed a day, so I had to double down, which was a mistake. I'm going to say that right now, if any of you do this program, don't double down, just skip that day. Again, the punishment idea of like, how am I accountable? If I had just been told to go run a 5K, I'd still be on day 2 of the training. I'd be like, you know, like, oh yeah, okay, I'll get to it. Yeah, okay, whatever. But the planning and the time, scheduling, time maintenance, and then also saying to myself, like, listen, if you don't do this, you know your friends. You are going to be running in December and nothing is going to be comfortable between anyone in the city of Cambridge. So.
Thank you.
No, that's great. So,
They would have kidnapped me.
yeah. What'll be helpful is to think about either this list or some things. What's one thing that you can do either today or tomorrow that will help you move some of your goals forward? And once you think of that, what I'd encourage you to do is tell the person next to you what that one thing is, and then the next time you see this person, ask them. It's that accountability. So what one thing from this list or other things can you do that will help you move forward? Tell the person next to you, and then when you see that person again, say, how's that going? And then we're just about out of time, so once you do that, I think we're done.